Hi everybody, Jane here. Thank you so much for watching today and welcome one and all. I am going to be working in this Royal Talens Art Creations book today. Now it's not really meant for mixed media, it's more of a sketchbook, but it was so inexpensive that I bought it, and what I do is I stick a number of pages together. It does buckle, it's not, the prettiest once you stuck everything on, but because I'm just mixing up my mediums, I don't mind. Now I'm starting off today with some industrial rice paper from Stamperia. Now I don't know the actual name, but I have got a code on the packaging and I will list that down in the description box along with everything else that I use. It's a fairly old one. It may be something like steampunk under the sea or something along those lines, I'm not sure. And I'm using my matte medium from Liquitex to stick this down. Matte medium is can be used as a collage glue, and it can also be used to mix it in with acrylic paints to improve the fluidity or to lighten them up without taking, like, desaturating your colours, if that makes sense. I don't think, not so much to lighten them up, but to make them move more freely. So I'm putting some of the medium on the back of the paper on the book, and then I seal it in as well. Now later on I will go over my whole page. Once I've used all the matte medium I'm going to use, I will go over with some gesso, which is a primer, and you can use it on paper as well as on canvases. It's is nowadays made for that. And I'm now adding in some acrylic paint to sort of fill in this gap. Now you may say, well, Joan, why did you just not stick a whole piece of paper across the pages? But sometimes you just do what you feel, and it's the same as when you tear up a piece of paper and you put it over everywhere in different places. It's just for a different look and to have fun with it. And as with all my art journaling is for me and you to watch if you're interested, but it is not to go on a gallery wall. It is not to be sold. It is primarily for me. So when I'm using my mediums, I'm doing whatever makes me happy in that moment. And if sometimes you might think, oh, that's not really what I would have done, that's not what I like, well, that's fine. If you want to do that in your projects, then that's, totally up to you. But I do what makes me happy in the moment. So I was adding on some different acrylic paints. Now some of these are a chalky paint from American Decor, some of them are from IndigoBlu, and the colours I used initially on the first part were Warm Tan from IndigoBlu and Porcelain from IndigoBlu. Then I wanted to add in some stenciling to sort of make the page a little bit more cohesive. Now I chose this stencil, and this stencil is, again, it's a very old stencil. I'm not even sure if it's still being made. Now it has got written on it Warp Grid Large, I do believe, so that's the name of the stencil. So if for any of the products that I list you want to search up, then that's probably the best way, because like I say, I am a strong believer in using excuse me, what you have. So if you don't have this exact stencil, I'm sure you've got things similar, or you might want to totally change the vibe of the page. My aim with these videos is just to give you some inspiration in terms of encouraging you to get your products out and to use them. And if you want to, recreate what I create, that's totally fine. But again, if you want to change it up and, add whatever you want, that's, exactly what I would love for you to all be doing. Now I chose the first part of that stencil. It was very, very fine, and I'd chosen quite a light colour, so it wasn't, probably the best colour to be going over. And the colours I used for that bit were, the first one was Vintage from Americana Decor, and then I used some Peppermint tea from IndigoBlu. Now once I'd put all that stenciling on, I thought my page was getting a bit too dark for my liking. It might be to somebody else's taste, but for me, I wanted to lift it a little bit with a bit of light contrast. So I'm going in, and this time I'm going in with the white Americana Decor. It's called Everlasting, but I think it's just white, and it's a chalky finish acrylic paint. And this stencil, now the last stencil and this stencil were both by France Papillion. She made these ones a long time. I think she now designs for Paper Artsy, but I'm not sure. So this one I think was called Rivets, but I'm not sure, and I hadn't written it on, and I don't tend to overly keep packaging because I've just put all my stencils in folders where I can easily reach them. So I'm just adding on some of this, and as soon as I did the first bit of this, I really liked how it looked. So I added in a lot more than I was intending. Now, I've got a few different books from Maremi's Small Art that have an industrial feel. So again, I will list them all in the description box. And because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I decided to off camera go through and just take out some bits, cut out some pieces, and then I sorted out the ones that I wanted. So before I got to this, but I had actually already more or less decided what I wanted. I was trying to lay out my images to give us sort of a little bit of perspective. So I put the bottles in line with his right shoe, and then I put the other bottles further forward so that that looked like it was in front and a bit closer. I had already played around with this, like I said, so I knew more or less where I wanted things to go. And I did that because I knew that some things were going to have to be stuck down before others. Now that still didn't totally work, because you'll see in a bit I do have to sort of remove a little bit of one of the images to stick another one behind, because I'd forgotten that I was going to put it behind. But by laying them out first of all, if you then want to like take a picture with your phone or anything like that, then just to remind yourself, because sometimes you lay everything out and you think, oh, that looks fantastic, I love how that looks, and then you move them all to start sticking them down, and then you can't remember. I don't worry too much. If I take them off and then I put them back slightly different, it doesn't worry me. It's all good. But if it's something that you really did like that layout and you wanted to definitely be recreating that, then that's just something that you could do. So as with the rice paper, these paper in these collage books isn't rice paper. The paper in these books is like a very thin, like copier type paper. So it sticks down really nicely with the matte medium. I don't find I need anything stronger for this. If ever I want to have a more sturdier image, what I do is I stick them onto a thin piece of card. Here's where I said to remove part to stick that behind. I stick them onto a very thin, lightweight card stock, and then I cut through both. Then if I'm doing that, I'm tending to have them raised, or I do use some sort of more substantial glue, like an acrylic glue or a glue gel, foam pads, those sorts of things. That's usually why I'm sticking it onto the cardboard. In this case, because it's going directly onto the page, I'm not really, worried about that. It's going flat. Everything already on the page, even though there is a degree of texture from the paper and the paint, it's not big textures, if you know what I mean. Now at this point I had then added a layer of clear gesso across the entire page. Now gesso traditionally was always used for canvases, but these days you can use it on your paper, and it provides a bit of a tooth and a primer layer. So if you've done like I have, where you had a lot of acrylic medium, that will work with some other products on top. Things like Archival inks will be fine on top of that. A more acrylic paint would be fine on top of that. But if you want to use something like a water reactive product like I'm using here, so I find I can get away with Inktense pencils to an extent, but I find they work better if I add a layer of gesso. Now, traditionally, when people were using it with canvases, you would put your gesso down and then you would sand it to smooth it out, and you put another layer of gesso. Things have moved on a bit since then, and I use gesso on my pages all the time. If you was to be, selling your work or hanging it in a gallery, then obviously you would research that a bit more to find out what the things you can and cannot do. This is in my journal. It is not going to be in the light. It's not going to be, if it breaks down over the course of a couple of years, I'm really not worried. I cannot emphasize that enough. This is for fun. This is for the process. This is for the play. This is not to create something that is going to be, in time memorial. Is that even the words? I'm not expecting this to be around. I don't even expect my children to keep these. So, you know, that is the level at which I want you to take my my projects, please. I'm not trying to create anything long lasting. It is for fun. Okay, so I went right through with a few different Inktense pencils here. I have got, I will tell you the colours, they're in front of me. I've got Baked Earth, Willow, Bark, and Teal Green. Now, Inktense are water reactive, so, and they are permanent when you have reacted to them, so they have to be watered out. So if you have got a big blob of pigment and you leave it there, obviously, and you don't water it out properly, if in the future you came back and you spilt some water on that, it would activate that bit of pigment. But once you have activated it out, then it should be fine, especially in this circumstance when it's just going in my journal. But I mix the colours up a bit. Sometimes I just use one. Bark is one of my favourites, but I felt like because it had a bit of like rustiness and patinery look, that the Willow and the Baked Earth and the Teal Green would really sort of go with it. And so I even took some of that green into the images so that it really connected the outside to the actual images themselves as well. So once I'd done all of the shading, I did feel that I needed a little bit of something in the background. Now I've gone in with a Sepia Archival ink and this little stamp from IndigoBlu. It's a collector's edition, it's a little dinky one, and it's called The Matrix, and it's lots of tiny numbers. Now you might not be able to see it in places very well, but it's definitely there, and I didn't want anything too that stood out too much. I wanted something that was quite subtle, which is why I've gone with this one, because it's very small numbers, so it doesn't show up too much. And I just wanted a little bit of that. And then I suddenly remembered I hadn't added strings. So I had some floating light bulbs, which, you know, would be very magical, but I wanted them all to be going up to the top. So I'm using a Unipin sepia coloured pen, and this is a brush one. And I drew the lines, and then I just sort of did little wiggly lines to make it match in with those ropey kind of lines that were on some of the other light bulbs. And I wanted to just, when I'd stuck the rice paper down initially, there was a little gap around the edges, and I just wanted to fill that in and add a little bit of a border. I don't always do this to my pages. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, if I feel that I need it. And I felt that this one did need a little bit of edging. So you can use your archival inks to do things like this. They're not generally a blendable ink. They dry very, very quickly. So, but you can add a little bit of colour. And I just put a foam onto a blender. And finally, I'm adding one of these sentiments from the Tim Holtz labels. So I have a little think and then just decided where it would go. So thank you ever so much for watching today. If you have enjoyed this video, do please give it a thumbs up. And if you are able to hype, that would be fab. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love it if you could do that as well. At the end of the video, you will see a list of my super supporters. These are my channel members, and if you would like more information on how to become a member, I will add that in the description box as well. So thank you everybody, and until the next time, bye bye.